What's going on, Endless fans? It's Whiteboard Wednesday. We're dropping some more knowledge bombs, and today we're talking about the most common question we get around lighting is, do I need haze at my event? And the question is, usually yes, you want haze, but we'll talk about what that involves and why you want it really briefly. If you don't know what haze is, it's basically a very thin particulate of fog, but it's not the same thing as fog. If you've ever been to your Halloween party where the DJ pumps on the fog and this big plume of smoke comes out and it's super thick, that is not haze. Haze is actually so thin that you can barely even tell it's there most of the time. It's just there to make the lights look better, which I'll explain kind of how that works. Essentially, the way it works is it adds a very thin, essentially mist, I will call it, in the air of this haze. And what it allows is that when light passes through it, it bounces off of all these little particulates of vapor and basically creates the look of the beam of light. If you've ever been out on a foggy day and you've ever seen headlights and how you can see the beams of headlights, same concept comes when it comes to haze. So how can we recreate that effect, and why do I want it for my events? Well, let's talk about it. Well, when you have haze for your event, particularly is good when you have what are called moving headlights. These are the lights that spin in 360 degrees. Probably seen them at a club or of a concert. A lot of them have a very nice, cool, tight beam. So then that way, when you add haze to them, you get this nice little beam of light. Now you might think to yourself, yeah, that's really cool, but why isn't the moving headlight cool on its own? Well, if you do no haze, these beams of light disappear and you don't actually see anything between the light and where it projects. So instead, let's say, for example, if this is projecting a circle gobo, before it would show, this nice big fat beam of light, but now it's only going to show a circle gobo. No beam of light, it's just going to show what the gobo is. This is totally fine, but to be honest, not really worth the money. You're spending all this money on nice lights. If you're going to have moving headlights, you might as well do haze. So again, my recommendation, no haze, you get just this gobo, whereas when you get haze, you get this nice cool beam of light. It allows you to fill the air, and to be honest, adds a lot of energy to an event as well. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, yeah, I gotta have haze now. I gotta do this for my event. Well, there's a couple things that you gotta know about when it comes to haze. First thing is there's two different types of haze. You have oil-based haze and water-based haze. The difference is that oil-based haze tends to stay in the air a little bit longer than water-based haze. It's actually can actually stay out a little bit further. It usually gives you a little bit more bang for your buck, but it has this oily texture to it. It usually leaves like kind of I'll call it an oil spill around the haze machine, the hazer. Whereas water-based haze doesn't stay in the air as long. However, there are some good machines that do last a long time, which your AV company should recommend to you. But it is more friendly to venues. It doesn't leave any sort of residue. It doesn't hang in the air. It can't get on carpet or anything like that. It's a lot cleaner. So with that being said, most venues are going to require you to use water-based haze. So if you are asking to do haze for your event, just make sure AV company is bringing water-based haze. Almost everyone has a water-based hazer for their event. So that's something to keep in mind. Oil versus water. Usually you want to stick with water. That's the best way to do it. If you're doing an outdoor festival though, and the sky's the limit and you need it to stay in the air as long as possible, you can do oil-based all day long. So now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I know the difference. I'm allowed to use water-based haze, but now the venue is talking to me about all these kind of weird restrictions and things like that. This is very common, especially in hotels and convention centers. They're going to put a couple things on you. If you're outdoors and you're not within any buildings or anything like that, you're not going to have any of these issues typically. But for indoor events, you will likely see this. First thing they're going to have to do is, because you are putting particulate in the air, is that they can trigger fire alarms. Specifically, the sprinkler system, the smoke detectors, it can basically make it think that it's smoking inside the room. And last thing we want to do is cause a fire alarm to come up and the fire department to show up. So what a venue will do is actually forcibly turn off the fire alarm. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that can be dangerous, right? What if there's an actual fire? That's a great point. Well, that's why a lot of venues will require you to bring down a fire watch. This is when they'll contact the local fire marshal and they'll actually have a fire representative come be on site for your event. This is basically someone who helps monitor to make sure there's no fires. If there is, it can be handled all right. To be honest, I'm not a firefighter, so I don't know exactly what they do. But it's something to keep in mind if you're going to use haze. It's not just the cost of the haze machine, which can be really cheap. It can be like $100, $200 to rent, but the cost comes in with bringing this fire watch down. They can charge somewhere, $50 an hour, $100 an hour, $200 an hour just to be there with keep in mind sometimes minimum calls as well. They might require that they be there for 5 hours, for example. So keep in mind that you might have to bring a fire watch to replace basically turning off the fire alarm system. Well, what that also means as well, in some cases as well, is that they will also have to submit a permit and get approved as well. So the thing to keep in mind is not only do you have a financial responsibility, financial commitment, but also a little bit of a time commitment as well. You can't make this decision a week out from the event a lot of the time because these permits sometimes take a couple weeks to get done. For example, we had an event that they forgot we were doing Haze, and even though we mentioned it to them, they forgot to submit the permit. Well, by the time the event rolled around, we ended up turning out that they didn't get the permit in time. Now we can't use Haze. Well, what's interesting is that the client spent all this money on these fancy lights to make their event look fantastic, and now they go from having these cool beams of light and everything to kind of a little bit more of a boring look. It's not going to look crappy by any means, but it definitely won't look as good. So that's why it's important to make sure that you submit your permits early on and that you talk to your venue early on about doing Haze, even before you contract your AV company, even know if you're going to do Haze or no Haze. Because the best thing that you can do is always say, oh, at last minute, we don't need the permit, we don't need the fire watch, because guess what, we're not going to do Haze. But if you are going to do it, you don't want to be caught behind the times. So that's it. That's basically, do I need to use Haze for my event? It's obviously up to you and what you're looking for. Obviously, there's lots of videos on YouTube that show the difference between Haze and no Haze. Feel free to Google those. But the big thing is it makes your lights just look better. The answer is up to you and whether you want to have it, whether these are the headaches that you kind of want to deal with and the things that you want to execute. Sometimes it can be pretty easy, or if it's worth it to make your lights look a lot better. So that's all. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your story, an example about how your event looked a lot better with Haze, or maybe an example of how you got around using Haze for an event. Leave it down in the comments below and let us know. We'd love to hear you. If you thought this video was super duper helpful, smash that subscribe button and also that bell icon so you can get notified every single Wednesday when we post Whiteboard Wednesday videos. And that's pretty much covers it for today. I hope you guys having a fantastic day, and we'll see you Wednesday on Whiteboard Wednesday.